name is Chris from Cognitive Systems, and my background is in semiconductor. I've worked in IC design for a number of years, and I came over to Cognitive as an IC designer. Since we started focusing on Wi-Fi sensing, I've taken on the role of working with chipset vendors to help expose the features and capabilities that we need in order to make sensing work.
Hi, I'm Taj Manku. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of Cognitive, and just a little bit about my background. I'm actually a physicist by trade, and I've started a number of other companies that were in the wireless space, specifically designing chips. So have a lot of knowledge of how a chip actually works at a very low level, including Wi-Fi, and that's about me.
Hi, my name's Paul. I'm the QA director here at Cognitive Systems. My background has been in RF all my life. I was in the Air Force as a communications technician. I left the Air Force and was fascinated with RF and mobile communications.
So the idea of Wi-Fi sensing was really inspired by the fact that we have a lot of this Wi-Fi in the air, and we use it a lot for communication. And it's actually flooding this area right now with lots of signals. But unfortunately, as humans, we can't physically see that. We can't see how it gets distorted as it moves around. But the Wi-Fi chipset, because there's data that it sort of collects, it can actually see that. So we thought, hey, why not exploit that and try to make a device sense or see those signals and provide value by, providing value from the fact that people are sort of moving around, and by the fact they're moving, you can sort of detect them. So that's sort of the basic foundational idea about it. And I think from a business perspective, one of the things we did with the WBA is we sort of use them as a leverage point to sort of get people to understand what this Wi-Fi sensing is. Because when we started, right, nobody knew about it. None of the ISPs understood what it was. We'd have to explain it to them. But this sort of introduced a forum where a bunch of people would gather. They would be talking about Wi-Fi sensing, and we would put together the first white paper that we had. And that was used to sort of get people involved and make them understand what this is. And today, most ISPs around the world, the big ones at least, and some of the smaller ones, they know about it. And that's partly because of all the stuff that we did with the WBA.
Yeah, from my perspective, it was challenging how do we test this stuff, right? How do we test Wi-Fi motion? I mean, there are plenty of standards for Wi-Fi, 3GPP, and all these other RF specs, but no one's testing Wi-Fi motion. So how do we build quality KPIs? How do we know whether it's working well or not? So that was one of my biggest challenges.
So we looked around for organizations that would help us really promote the Wi-Fi sensing, and they stood out in terms of an organization that would help us lobby it forward and then bring it to the standard bodies, for example, the IEEE. But we needed to get a coalition of people together to able to take that and move it forward to something like the IEEE. And with the work that we did with them, that enabled us to do that.
The WBA really had a diverse set of members from different groups as well. There's ISPs, there were service providers, technology creators like us, and also people that had a lot of connections with the standards. So there's a lot of contributors to the IEEE, a lot of contributors who are involved with the Wi-Fi Alliance. And because of that, it's just a great spot to bring everybody together kind of under one roof and start discussing these new features and building a new technology. I think for that, it's really getting an industry-wide engagement going in various different standard groups. So for example, in the IEEE, there's been a project which has been going on since 2019 roughly, called TGBF, so Task Group BF. And this group is really creating an amendment to the 802.11 standards to introduce some of the features that I mentioned before were missing, and help really build the technology from a standard perspective at the lowest layers. So I think that's been one of the great outcomes of the work that we've done within the WBA.
Yeah, they helped a lot with the testing aspects. So Paul can probably talk about how to test it. We actually went and put it into a test facility. They helped with that. And people started actually using that test facility. A lot of the use cases were brought up and introduced to a bunch of other folks. Some of them are customers, some of them are partners. So
Yeah, exactly.
that way they made a big difference.
Yeah, no, exactly. To your point, Taj. We were working with a ISP, a very large ISP in Europe, and part of their test requirement was actually built on what we delivered to the WBA, our test guidance. So I was like, wow, that was, to me, that was like the pinnacle of what it was all about, right? We created a standard, and now people are looking to the WBA and for guidance on the way we test.
So there's a lot of applications for it, and I think it's just starting. It's ramping out in the industry. There are devices now with it, millions and millions of devices using it, and it's just starting. And once you start getting this out there, the applications are going to be stuff we can't even think about today. But generally speaking, now you have all these devices that are now sensing motion. You create this network, you create all this data. You can now start maybe doing refinements in terms of understanding more of what's actually happening in the home, also in the business, in an enterprise environment. And I think there's a lot of applications, a lot of markets that it can approach. And the reason why it can do that is because Wi-Fi is everywhere, right? It's there, it's not going away, and it's actually growing in terms of the number of devices out there. And with this growth, there are going to be a ton of other applications.